Karen's demolition crew tore apart my grandfather's 80-year-old bridge at dawn. They said it was a safety hazard. What they didn't know was that they'd just destroyed the only road connecting their neighborhood to the outside world, and it belonged to me. The sound of the chainsaws hit first raw metallic wrong. 6:30 a.m. Silver Creek was supposed to be quiet. Nothing but birds and water. I stumbled out of bed, heart pounding, and ran to the back fence. My stomach dropped. 4 workers in yellow vests were hacking through the old oak timbers my grandfather had built by hand in 1943. The smell of gasoline and sawdust filled the air. And in the middle of it all stood Karen Williams' blonde hair, perfectly sprayed clipboard, clutched like a royal scepter, directing the operation like she was Queen of Willow Creek Estates. I shouted, "Stop! What the hell are you doing? That's my bridge." Karen turned all smug smile and condescension. "Mr. Parker, this structure is a liability. The HOA has the right, no, the duty to address community safety issues. It's unsightly and unsafe." Her tone was syrupy, but her eyes said something else, disdain. I demanded to see a permit environmental clearance notice to the property owner. She just tilted her head, gave a fake laugh, and signaled the crew to keep going. The chainsaws screamed again, and another chunk of my family history crashed into the creek below. That bridge wasn't just wood and bolts. My grandfather built it during the war with salvaged barn oak and hand-forged iron. Every plank held a memory, his sweat, his patience, his craftsmanship. Watching it collapse under strangers' hands felt like losing him all over again. I pulled out my phone, hit record, and forced myself to breathe. Rage wouldn't fix this, but evidence might. I filmed everything, faces, trucks, equipment. When the last beam hit the water, I promised myself something. Karen Williams thought she'd flexed her HOA power. She had no idea she'd just declared war on the wrong man. The next morning, I stood over what was left, the stone footings, the rippling water, the silence after destruction. I remembered my grandfather's voice. "Don't fight mad, fight smart." So that's what I did. At 8 sharp, I was at the Harrison County Records Office with a thermos of coffee and a purpose. Janet, the clerk, recognized me from past electrical jobs. Back again. "David. What are you digging up this time?" I smiled grimly. 40 acres of truth, Janet. She rolled out dusty ledgers and old survey maps that smelled like paper and history. Hours later, I found it the 1943 easement agreement. My great-grandfather had granted access to what would become Willow Creek Estates, on the condition that the right could be revoked if the users ever damaged our property. My pulse quickened. The only road into their fancy subdivision, Maple Lane, wasn't public at all. It was ours. That night, I met my neighbor Michael Thompson, a retired surveyor. He studied the documents, whistled low, and said, "You realize this means the whole HOA 127 homes depends on your land for access." I nodded. If they had to build a new road, it'd take millions and years of permits. Michael leaned back. Then Karen just cut off her own kingdom. I mailed a certified cease and desist letter the next morning, giving them 14 days to respond and pay for the bridge they'd destroyed. 3 days later, I got her reply, a snide, legal-sounding dismissal claiming emergency safety action. Typical Karen, arrogant and ignorant. But I didn't waste time arguing. I went to the county inspector and the sheriff's office. The inspector opened a violation case for working near a waterway without permits, $2,500 per day in fines. The sheriff flagged it as criminal mischief and trespassing. Within 48 hours, Karen's little project had turned into an official investigation. The local paper picked up the story. HOA overreach leads to legal showdown. Social media exploded. Homeowners across Texas shared it, telling their own HOA horror stories. And yet, despite the attention, I started doubting myself. Maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe I was turning into the villain, punishing a whole community for one woman's mistake. I almost let it go. For a few days, I told myself I didn't need revenge, that I could rebuild the bridge and move on. Then, Patricia Henderson knocked on my door. She was a retired school principal, soft-spoken but firm, and a sitting member of Karen's HOA board. She slid a manila envelope across my table. "Mr. Parker," she said not all of us agreed with what she did. "You should see this." Inside were internal emails, meeting notes, and payment records. Karen had authorized the demolition herself, using HOA funds, illegally skipping board approval. One email to the contractor read, "Don't worry about the paperwork. It's just one old man. What's he going to do, sue the neighborhood?" Another text said, "Sometimes you have to make executive decisions for the greater good." I laughed, bitter and tired. The greater good, of course. Patricia sighed. She's been using HOA money like her personal account, flowers, security consultations with her nephew's company. The bridge was the final straw. By the time Patricia left, I wasn't angry anymore, I was focused. This wasn't personal vengeance, it was accountability. But Karen wasn't done escalating. A week later, someone spray-painted my cameras black and smashed my mailbox with a bat. Mail scattered everywhere. They thought they were clever, but I had backup cameras hidden in the trees. The footage caught two teenagers coming from Willow Creek's direction. I sent the video straight to Deputy Miller. Within days, they identified the kids' sons of two HOA board members. Suddenly, vandalism turned into conspiracy. Parents panicked. Residents started whispering. An online thread popped up. What else haven't we been told? The tide was turning. 3 weeks later, the county scheduled a public mediation session at the Willow Creek Elementary Gym. A retired judge named William Foster would oversee it. I arrived early, set up my laptop and projector, and stacked 3 boxes of documents beside me. Karen walked in, flanked by her lawyer, James Mitchell, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. She was pale, but still defiant, heels clicking like gunshots on the gym floor. When the judge opened the floor, I started simple. How many of you knew your entire neighborhood sits behind a private easement owned by my family? Not a single hand went up. I projected the 1943 document on the wall, the clause about revocation highlighted in yellow. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Faces turned toward Karen. Then I brought up the emails Patricia had given me, the proof of unauthorized spending. The messages mocking me, the signed payment to the demolition crew. Each slide hit like a hammer. Gasps, whispers, outrage. Karen finally stood, clutching her prepared statement. Everything I did was for community safety. That bridge was a danger to children and property values, Judge Foster interrupted. Did you obtain a permit before ordering the demolition? She hesitated, then sneered. Permits are bureaucratic red tape. Sometimes leaders have to act. The room went dead silent. A few people walked out shaking their heads. The judge wrote something on his notepad, then looked up. That'll be enough, Ms. Williams? He read the settlement terms aloud. The HOA must pay full restitution for the bridge, cover my legal fees and security upgrades, and formally acknowledge my easement rights. Karen Williams would resign effective immediately and be barred from board positions for 5 years. Any violation of the agreement would void the easement, cutting off the entire neighborhood's road access. When Karen signed, her hand trembled. The community clapped, not out of celebration, but relief. Patricia approached me afterward and said softly, "You could have destroyed us, but you chose justice instead." I didn't answer, just nodded, because it was true. I'd thought about revoking the easement entirely, watching their perfect suburban world crumble. But revenge wasn't the point. Accountability was. Karen sold her house 6 weeks later at a loss. Her name became a cautionary tale across the county. The HOA reformed under Patricia's leadership, transparent, fair, and humble. My new bridge went up a few months later, steel reinforced, but still built with the same care my grandfather taught me. Kids now call it Mr. Parker's Bridge. As I watched the sun set over Silver Creek, I realized something my grandfather probably knew all along. Some bridges are meant to connect people, but others have to burn before anyone learns who really owns the road.